Fast, sleek, and mysterious, the Yakovlev Yak-28 wasn't just another Soviet jet. It was a symbol of the Cold War skies, designed to challenge NATO air defenses and carry out missions that demanded both speed and power. Today, we're diving deep into the story of the Yak-28, a jet that carried the Soviet Union's ambitions high into the stratosphere. The Cold War wasn't just fought with spies and missiles. It was also fought in the skies. Both the United States and the Soviet Union were locked in an intense arms race, each trying to outdo the other with faster, deadlier, and more advanced aircraft. In the West, planes like the F-105 Thunderchief and the F-4 Phantom II were dominating the conversation. But in the East, the Soviets had their own answer, the Yakovlev Yak-28. The Yak-28 was designed by the Yakovlev Design Bureau, a company already famous for creating nimble fighters during World War II. By the late 1950s, however, the game had changed. Speed was everything. Supersonic flight wasn't just a dream anymore, it was a requirement. The Soviet military wanted a multi-role aircraft that could serve as a fighter-bomber, an interceptor, and even a reconnaissance platform. Out of this demand came the Yak-28, which made its first flight in 1958 and officially entered service in 1960. This wasn't just another jet, it was part of the larger Soviet strategy to strike fear into NATO with fast, flexible, and hard-hitting aircraft. Let's talk about the design. The Yak-28 had a very distinctive look. Its most striking feature? The engine placement. Instead of being built into the fuselage, the engines were mounted in pods on the wings. This gave the Yak-28 a sleek, futuristic profile, almost alien compared to other jets of its time. The wings were swept back at a sharp angle, giving it excellent aerodynamics at high speeds. The aircraft's fuselage was long and narrow, optimized for speed and altitude rather than agility. Up front, the nose housed radar and navigation systems, which made the Yak-28 adaptable to multiple roles. It could carry bombs, air-to-air missiles, or reconnaissance gear, depending on the mission. Now, here's where the Yak-28 really shines. Let's break down the performance. Maximum speed, around Mach 1.5, that's over 1,800 km per hour, fast enough to outrun many threats of its time. Service ceiling, nearly 16,000 meters, which meant it could fly higher than most interceptors could comfortably reach. Range, roughly 2,500 kilometers without refueling, giving it deep strike capability into enemy territory. Engines, 2 Tumansky turbojets that delivered massive thrust and reliability. This combination of speed, altitude, and range made the Yak-28 a versatile weapon, whether it was dropping bombs, intercepting NATO aircraft, or photographing enemy installations from high above. The Yak-28 was designed by the Yakovlev Design Bureau, a company already famous for creating nimble fighters during World War II. By the late 1950s, however, the game had changed. Speed was everything. Supersonic flight wasn't just a dream anymore, it was a requirement. The Soviet military wanted a multi-role aircraft that could serve as a fighter-bomber, an interceptor, and even a reconnaissance platform. Out of this demand came the Yak-28, which made its first flight in 1958 and officially entered service in 1960. This wasn't just another jet, it was part of the larger Soviet strategy to strike fear into NATO with fast, flexible, and hard-hitting aircraft. Like every aircraft, the Yak-28 had its strengths and weaknesses. High speed and altitude made it difficult to intercept. Versatility across bomber, interceptor, and recon roles. Imposing Cold War design that made it a psychological weapon as much as a physical one. Its engines, while powerful, consumed enormous amounts of fuel. Handling at lower speeds was tricky, especially on takeoff and landing. The Yak-28 never achieved the same fame as Western jets like the Phantom II, partly because it was used more as a defensive tool than an offensive superstar. The Yak-28 wasn't just a showpiece. It was deployed in large numbers across the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. During the 1960s and 1970s, it played a critical role in defending Soviet airspace and in reconnaissance missions along NATO borders. It may not have seen the same kind of combat action as American jets in Vietnam, but it was constantly on alert, ready to respond at a moment's notice. In fact, NATO gave it the reporting name Brewer. And while Western pilots rarely encountered it in direct combat, they respected its speed and its potential as a nuclear-capable bomber. So, what made the Yak-28 stand out? First, its engine pod design. Most jets placed engines inside the fuselage, but the Yak-28's unique layout not only gave it a distinctive look but also improved maintenance and allowed for better payload distribution. Second, its multi-role capability. The fact that one airframe could be adapted into bombers, interceptors, and reconnaissance aircraft was a huge advantage in the Cold War, where flexibility meant survival. And third, its psychological impact. While not as glamorous as the MiG-21 or as famous as the MiG-29, the Yak-28 was a constant reminder to NATO that the Soviet Union could strike deep and fast if the Cold War ever turned hot. By the 1980s, newer jets like the Sukhoi Su-24 and MiG-25 began to outclass the Yak-28, and it was gradually retired. But its legacy remains. The Yak-28 proved that the Yakovlev Design Bureau could compete in the supersonic age. It served as a stepping stone between the early jet age and the more advanced aircraft of the 1970s and 80s. Today, some Yak-28s can still be found in aviation museums, standing as silent reminders of an era when speed and nuclear capability ruled the skies. The Yakovlev Yak-28 may not be the most famous jet of the Cold War, but it was a workhorse that carried the weight of Soviet air defense strategy for decades. It was fast, it was versatile, and it was built for one purpose: to keep the Soviet Union one step ahead in the dangerous game of nuclear brinkmanship. So next time you think about Cold War jets, don't just remember the MiGs and Phantoms. Remember the Yak-28, the silent brewer that flew above the Iron Curtain, always ready, always watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into aviation history, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more incredible jet stories. And let me know in the comments which aircraft you want us to cover next. Until then, keep your eyes on the skies, like, share and subscribe my YouTube channel for more interesting videos.